She started her metaphysical explorations with the Rosicrucian order at age 17. She discovered the tarot in 1980 and learned from many readers and systems. She studied and taught Tai Chi and Qigong in the Shen Tao Institute from 1989 to 1995 and completed the Dan Human School intensive program in meditation, energy work, healing, and nonverbal communication in 1998. She started learning dowsing from Suzanne Schwartz and the White Mountain Dowsers in 2007. Sheila has been active in the Toastmasters International Leadership and Communication Program since 1974. Sharing and teaching are her favorite activities. Honesty, diligence, compassion, and kindness are her cardinal values. She has degrees at Simmons College in comparative literature and philosophy with concentrations in communication and brain-mind interference. She's sampled many religions and spiritual practices, and she is here to talk about tarot for health and enlightenment.
Wow, you read the whole thing.
I did.
Nowadays, instead of applauding, we do jazz hands. Yay. Thank you. If everyone will look at themselves on the participant side, you'll see where you can raise hands. And I'd love if anyone who has had tarot experience before would just raise a hand, or if this is all new to you. Well, I'm not seeing a lot of hands raised, so let us suppose for the moment that means that we're novices and you're not going to be annoyed because I'm going to be very basic. The first thing I think everybody should know is that my opinions are free and worth every penny you paid for them. I do not make a business of doing tarot, although I've been doing it a very long time. I take money to teach. I haven't really taken money for readings except when I'm doing charities. If you have questions at any time, please put them in the chat and then we'll address them later. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes, then we're going to do a reading. If someone has a specific question, we might be able to do a reading for that right now. Let's start. And while I'm doing the PowerPoint, I'm not reading the PowerPoint to you. You can download it anytime. I just want to make sure that you get to see all the graphics that make this more fun. Remembering that opinions are free. Like dowsing, tarot, or any esoteric practice, you really have to think about your ethics. And in dowsing, I was taught to always ask, can I? May I? Should I? But whatever system you use, whatever phrasing you use, try to be consistent. And all the time, whenever you're doing any kind of metaphysical practice or teaching anyone, it's really okay to say, I don't know. When you're thinking about tarot, try to ask a question that can be answered simply. We'll go into details about how to frame questions later. And never use medical terminology when you're reading for someone else. And I learned really early on in my training, after I had slept with the cards for 30 days, meditated on a card a day, memorized all the things, and read all the books, the very first question I asked was, why am I fat? And the reading I got unequivocally, without a doubt, said, because you eat too much and you don't exercise. Well, that was pretty obvious. The second question I asked, because my current husband Bill and I had been living together for a while and known each other since we were like teenagers, I said, will Bill decide to marry me in the next 6 months? And the card said, ask him. No, seriously. The answers were just so unambiguous. So I got up and went into the other room and I asked him and he said, I don't know. Typical guy, maybe. So I learned two things from that. Anything I need to know about myself, I might already know it if I just contemplate the question and let it come up. And mind my own business. Don't ask stuff about other people unless you have their consent or you're making it a free will offering. For good guidelines, look at the Dowser's guidelines. They can be really helpful. I learned to read tarot cards with the Rider-Waite deck. I'll show you more about that later. I'm a big fan of Pamela Coleman Smith's art because her art is so accessible and it really isn't trying to intimidate you with how exotic it is. It makes it easy to understand the meanings, and the pictures are only designed to be reminders for you, basically mnemonics, about what that card means. All the meanings in tarot depend on numbers and the implications of the basic icons. It's a complicated system. I will quote or paraphrase the speaker just before me and say, this is a 4-hour workshop condensed into 40 minutes. I won't go too fast. When you think about tarot cards, spiritual enlightenment is the highest value, bondage to the material is the lowest. There is no physical death. When you get the death card, it means the death of the ego and transcending that level of experience. Every number has meanings across all the suits, but each of the suits manifests those meanings differently. The major cards represent principles, the minor cards represent human experiences, and in my opinion, the future does not exist yet, otherwise it wouldn't be the future, but the probabilities and the factors contributing to the future are inherent in the present moment. This is a slide that you're going to want to look at later. When you're going through this again, you don't have to remember this all right now. The most important thing to remember is that there are thousands and thousands of possible combinations of cards just in the Celtic cross layout. The suits roughly correspond. Wands are fire, cups are water, swords are air, pentacles are earth, and all of the major arcana cards are spirit. It's going to start looking very familiar if you've never seen tarot cards before, once we get into it a little bit. These are examples of major arcana cards. Some of my favorites. The Fool, for example, is spirit before it manifests, about to jump off the cliff, heedless and not directed. That's the 0. Everything is possible. The High Priestess is the binary yin-yang, up, down, positive, negative, inner, outer, light, dark, all of those dichotomies. And the Empress, the 3, that's definitely the essence of bountifulness and nature. And my pet card, my favorite, is the Hermit, the 9, my luckiest lucky number because it's 3 times 3. I bet a whole bunch of other people have thought of that at the same time. But whether you are looking at that as a teacher you need or as yourself as a leader, it's a very powerful card. And these are examples of minor arcana cards. If you look at them, you'll see the 4 suits. You'll see that the characters embodied here are doing things that you can identify with as a human being. And the numbers still are the numbers. And these two cards are gate cards, not because they're cups or pentacles, but because they're the sixes. In each case, this card is going to tell you that you have a choice. You can go through the gate or not. It depends on your choice and where the cards are leading you in the layout. But what do your gates look like? When you think of the gate concept, this is a little bit of my whimsy. When I say the word gate, you probably have a picture in your mind. It might be one of these, or it just might be a pet gate that keeps the dog out of the kitchen. Every single one of the cards in a tarot deck has icons that are intended to bring to your mind something about your own human experience. Well, we use the word layout a lot. What's a layout? It's simply a pattern that you spread the cards out, and in most cases, you are laying them out in a specific sequence into particular positions, and the positions mean something as well as the cards do. Just like Indian sand paintings or mandalas or sacred geometry, it's a pattern that leads your mind to a particular state of being so that you can receive the wisdom that you're seeking. And the workhorse of all tarot layouts is the Celtic cross and staff. This handy graphic shows you the approximate sequence of laying the cards out and suggested meanings for the position of the cards. And I remind you, you don't have to remember all of this. It's all in the PowerPoint that you can download. It's not a bad idea when you set up your workspace to do something like this, just to remind you where to put the cards. What isn't numbered is the significator card. That's the card that you might pull to represent you or your question. You don't have to use a significator, but it is helpful. If you're reading for yourself, the significator might help you focus a little bit more and determine which suit or realm the issue is residing in for you. But if you're already very clear about your question, you might not have to use one. This is an example of a layout that I did when I was writing the article for the ASD Digest and for our White Mountain Dowsers newsletter. I started out by asking about what should I focus on in this article and worked my way through. You'd have to read the article to see the whole thing, but it just gives you an idea of what it looks like when you actually lay all the cards out. This is not just whimsy. When you look at the layout of the tarot cards, there is fluid motion of the energy. It starts with the question and it goes around and spirals in a clockwise direction, up and out. I looked everywhere for spinner graphics that would give you the concept that the tarot layout, although it is just little pieces of cardboard, the energy that it represents is dynamic. You might think of it as an energy vortex, and the four cards that surround the question, the corners of pyramids. Whatever system you're used to working in, you can relate to that there's movement within that system. Let's begin any reading with some exercises to focus our energy and help protect the reader and the querent. Oh, always do some cleansing breaths. Think about your space. Think about who's permitted inside the space. If you're reading for someone else, ask them if they want someone else present. You don't want your reading to be invaded by inimical energies. And if you don't have a private room, you need to get people away from you unless it's someone that you or the person you're reading for want close to you. The Celtic Cross specifically is good for assessing the overall situation, for highlighting the challenges and strengths, your challenges and strengths, and how other people are seeing you in relation to the question. After you get used to this kind of layout, then you can try other kinds. There are millions of them. There are as many kinds of layouts as there are people reading tarot cards. And you can make up your own as you get comfortable with the process. In tarot reading, as in life, the quality of your answers depends on the quality of your questions. Try to ask a question that can be answered in this moment, considering the factors affecting the outcome in this moment. Remember, it's only 10 cards in the basic cross, so it can only take into account those factors. And frame your question, I like to think of them the basics of journalism. Who's involved? What is happening, or what do you want? Where is this happening? When, why, and how? When you have that framework, then you're getting closer to a question that you can get an answer for. If you're talking about an illness or damage, think about these questions. Is this a long-term chronic problem? Is it something that came with your body? Is it an inherited problem? Have you been medically diagnosed? Is this something they call a condition or a syndrome, which means that they might think it's psychological, although it may not be? Are you dealing with a contagious disease, a lifestyle disease, or do you have no idea what's wrong with you? Likewise, when you're looking at the metaphysical issues, what's the time frame? Is it relationships? Is it your family? Like you inherited, and this is the thread of dysfunction down through many generations. Is it a career thing? Are you trying to make a decision? Just what are you dealing with? Intellectual, emotional, spiritual? Try to narrow it down in your own mind so that when you ask the question, it's a question that can be answered. Okay, this is my contact information, and we're just going to stop sharing for the moment. Emma, remind me how to stop sharing. There we go. Thank you. You're so kind. At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions. No questions? Do we have a live audience?
I'm here.
Oh, yay! Okay, now we're going to move to my work surface here on my desktop. If you get vertigo from the camera moving, just close your eyes for a second while I refocus the camera. There we go. Or maybe not. Can you see that? Can everyone see that? This is the size of a normal tarot card that we would use if we were reading for people. This is my little mini set over here on the other side that I use because that's how much space I have on my desk. This is the original box of cards that I got back in 1980. There are a lot of superstitions around tarot cards, like you should wrap them in silk and never let anyone else touch them. Well, I have this nice polyester scarf and this lovely little fabric travel bag that I've been keeping these cards in for, how many years is that? Like 40 something? They do keep the cards clean and safe, and that's why I've been able to have the same cards for so long. But very early on in my practice, I figured out that if I don't have sufficient sense of self and ability to center, that someone else touching my cards can't disrupt my function, then I shouldn't be doing it. Other people might feel differently because they want to be very, very careful about having their things contaminated. Since I've read for hundreds of people, and that means hundreds of people have handled my cards, every time I pick up my deck, I shuffle 3 times to clear the deck and to help randomize the cards. And if it's been a really robust session of reading for lots and lots of people, I'll probably spend a little bit extra time, reverse the cards, mess them around a little bit more, and just baby them a little bit. Basically like a tarot card massage, just to make sure that the cards and I are settled. Also, when I'm reading for people, I get up and go to the bathroom and wash my hands between people every time. And this just helps me be clear. Thank you, Emma, for responding to that request. When you want to get a significator, yeah, you can talk to me.
I was just saying, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay. If you want to choose a significator for someone, right, after you shuffle the cards, you divide them into 3 piles and pick up the one that appeals to you most first, whether it looks darker or lighter, and it doesn't matter, and then put them back together in any sequence at all. Some readers will choose the significator based on the person's appearance, based on the nature of the question. If you're reading for yourself, you might, if it's about money, you might choose a Pentacles card to represent you. But what I love to do is fan the cards and say, pick a card, any card. How the person responds to that tells me a little bit about their personality. I never want to know the question, but I'm looking at the cards right now and I'm going to say, if they go for this one, it means they want an obvious answer. And if they go digging through the cards, looking for something mysterious, then maybe they want more romance in the reading, which isn't going to affect how I read. It's just interesting to me. The cards are always read up or down in relation to the purple person doing the reading. So to you, that card looks upside down, but to me as the reader, it's right side up. This card is the significator. That represents the question. As a reader, unless it's my own question, I don't want to know the person's question. I don't want to have an opinion. I don't want anything to get in the way of the reading being just pure channeling of the universal energy. The next card is going to be the atmosphere. Remember, this is reversed to me, where you're seeing it right side up. That's the atmosphere, the context, the environment surrounding the question. And this card is what crosses it. And the crossing either escalates or diminishes the impact of the environment. It can represent challenges, but more often I see that it is a way of looking for the future or the past in relation to this question. The card below is the basis card, the farther past, the subconscious, the hidden. It's what's under the question. Over here, which is on my left, your right, is the near past. And you see how the crossing card is facing that way? Well, that would give me a clue that what's going on in this reading is something having to do with a recent event. This is what's above, it's possibilities, the near future, or I've learned to see it as what you may become aware of in the next 2 seconds to 2 days. Something that magically appears. It could be just what you realize from this reading. And this is the overall tendency of this reading. And here's where you get that spiral effect. It's coming up out of the source question, around and out. And the energy is flowing above in a vortex. Over to my right is the staff. The first position is your self-image in relation to the question. Then this is others' opinions or images of you in relation to the question. Whoever is relevant, and you get to decide who's relevant to this question. In essence, you get to decide whose opinion matters to you or who has an impact on the situation. This is the hopes, fears, and expectations position. What are you hoping? What are you fearing? Or do you have an expectation about how this is going to go? And finally, the key, the culminator card. And that is supposed to make all the rest of it make sense. In this case, it does make it make sense to me. When I look at this question here, starting right back here at the significator, the Eight of Pentacles is the card of someone practicing their trade. And I'm going to change the position of this a little bit so that you can see what it looks like. As you can see, this person has already achieved a great deal of skill, is making perfect pentacles over and over and over again. The question might be, am I ready to graduate to master level? The question could be, am I good enough? The atmosphere of this question is this card reversed to me. You're seeing it right side up. Well, reversed, this is kind of a hesitation to go on that journey, a holding back, a little bit of fearfulness. The Wands represent fire and energy and the readiness, the fullness, but not taking action yet. And why not? That's the question. And there comes your crossing card. And that's the Two of Cups, which should mean partnership, should mean harmony, balancing both sides of an emotional situation to the past. Is that what's holding back this movement? Let's see. Going down here to the basis of the matter, it's reversed for me. It's a little bit complicated to remember that, but in the past there has been some kind of an effort to make that journey and it failed. So maybe there's a fear of failure. And that's intellectual. The swords, that's air, and that is all in your mind. Whatever's holding you back. In the past, there was some kind of a worldly success. Again, I'll show you that card so you can see it right side up. The nines are very close to fruition, manifesting the essence of the suit, and yet still not going anywhere. Being mature, having it all, no movement. Again, what's going on? And then here, in the near future, we have the King of Wands, and there's a relationship between the King of Wands and this atmosphere that the person getting this reading may realize that they actually do have everything that they need, that they're mature enough, that they're ready. The overall tendency of the situation is the Three of Swords, and anyone looking at this can figure out what this means. That is some kind of heartbreak or stress. And looking at this, I would say, if the querent doesn't move forward, that's going to result in a lot of mental pain. Looking at that Three of Wands relating to the Three of Hearts. Coming down here to the self-image. I don't think you can see this very well. It's the Two of Swords. Suspended in one of those, should I not, do this or do that. That's the self-image. How are other people seeing it in relation to this question? Can you see that? That is the Ace of Pentacles, which is a gift from the universe saying, you have everything you need. Why aren't you moving forward? Everything you need, not moving forward. That's pretty interesting. Hopes, fears, and expectations is the King of Swords reversed. Reversed to the reader, remember. Swords are intellect. Kings are the maturity of the suit, the mature administration and keeping everybody safe and keeping the nation in line. So what kind of a fear is that? Well, maybe that you might not be a good administrator or a good leader or do a good job. Sounds like a basic insecurity to me. And finally, the key. And this is one of my favorite cards. This is the Nine of Swords. And if you look at this card, I don't see how well you can see it. This person is not quite surrounded by swords. and those bindings are very loose. The person is standing in water, which of course represents spirit, and probably is only being held in place by her own expectations and beliefs, could shrug off the bindings, take off the blindfold, and walk away. That makes all the rest of this make sense, because it is our own self-image, our own perceptions that bind us and keep us from doing what we want to do and moving forward. And this seems like a really good time to ask for questions. You can raise your hand or you can put a chat. I'd rather have verbal questions. Does anyone have a question? Emma can unmute you. Hello. Anybody there?
Do you think I should unmute everyone?
Yeah. Let's see if anybody is actually here. Unmuting. I see Darlene. Darlene's been here a long time. Darlene, do you have any questions?
I have no experience doing tarot, so I would appreciate seeing some more layouts and explanations.
Okay. Do you have a question you would like us to address?
I don't think I know enough about it to ask.
Well, it could be any kind of a question.
You mean a question to ask the tarot? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because the reading is much more meaningful if there's a question to respond to.
But I wouldn't tell you what it is, right?
Right, but you need to have it in mind. Well, she's thinking about it. Does anyone else have a question? Okay. Well, if you want to see another reading, and this is pretty interesting, I'm going to take a picture of this. So when taking a static picture, I just kind of stack the cards out of the way. I do keep a journal of readings, and I do take pictures of some of the readings, just so I can go back through them and say, what would I think of that today, before I gather them back up. I have a question that we could all share, unless you come up with a question. And that is, how can we best help our world come back to some kind of balance and unity? Does anyone have a modification of that question they'd like to offer?
I think that sounds good.
Okay. So I'm shuffling the cards 3 times, as usual. It can be more than 3, but it's at least 3. And if you're reading, you should keep shuffling the cards. Whoever wants the question should keep shuffling the cards until the question is really clear in their mind. And then you break it using your left hand into 3 piles and look at them and say, which one do I like the best? It could look darker to you or lighter or brighter, or just be random. And let's just take a card here. This is Strength. It's a major arcana card. It's the number 8. It is right side up to me, the reader. So that represents our question. The Atmosphere is the Ace of Wands reversed. And the Crossing card is the Four of Cups. Knowing the cards as well as I do at this point, I think this is going to be a really coherent reading. What's below it is the Hanged Man. Now, this is another major arcana card. Let me turn it around so you can see what it looks like. It is the number 12. If you're into philosophy, this is Kierkegaard's Night of Infinite Resignation. There's the Nine of Wands, and you'll see some relation between the Nine of Wands and that Nine of Swords that we had the last time. The person is in a similar position, but not bound, except by his own beliefs. The King of Pentacles is what may become obvious, and this is the overall tendency of the situation, is the Four of Swords. Self-image, what others who are relevant to the situation think about it. Hopes, fears, and expectations. And the key, which I need to bring back down here so you can see it. There we go. All right. And what you said, Darlene, is you don't know enough about it. This is the basic tarot book that I started with. I will put that into chat after I finish talking. I graduated from that to Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which I'll also put in the chat. If you don't know anything, what you do is after you lay the cards out, you open to that card and you read the interpretations. It just works fine. After a while, after repetition, you start developing your own feeling for what the cards mean for you. It's a process. It takes a while, but I always found it very soothing. I like books and I like colorful pictures. So reading the cards, reading the book, and then from the possible interpretations in the book, deciding what worked for me in that reading. It's just all a process. So let's take a look back here, now that we've got them all laid out, and see the question. Strength is, if you look at it, this is the woman either opening or closing the lion's mouth. It's, you see the figure 8 above the cosmic lemniscate, the infinity sign above her head. You see the mountains of wisdom in the background. You see the water and nature beneath it. This is the card that essentially tells us that we overcome our animal nature by love and patience in spirit, not by brute force. So that question, how can we best support peace and unity in our world today? It's not with violence, it's with love and compassion and understanding and gentle force, supported by wisdom and by our own innate nature. If the Ace of Wands was upright, it would be a new opportunity for some creative activity, but it's reversed. The atmosphere is very negative for that unity and creativity. But wait, what crosses it? This is the Four of Cups. Cups are always spirit, love, communication, and creative vision, where Wands are the creative action, Cups are the creative vision, and that Four of Cups is facing to the future, and you see the universe presenting an opportunity for creativity. But it's not a headlong charge, which we're going to find over here. Beneath it all, the Hanged Man, remember that night of infinite resignation? No one hung him on the cross. He chose, because the alchemists used to believe that if you hung with your head down, your blood would rush to your head and then you would be smarter. I'm not sure if that really works, but it means that in the past, there has been not an acceptance of reality. When you actually hang yourself on the world tree, it means you are taking in and accepting reality just as it is given to us. That reversed is the basis of the matter that is underneath. It is the root, the source of the current problem that we're addressing, is because people don't see, don't perceive, don't accept reality. They try to fit their own expectations onto what they want to see. And the near past is the Nine of Wands, and this represents fighting, 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 having fought. There's a pause in the battle, but being ready to fight some more, which, as we just heard, isn't really the answer. And what become obvious in the near future is the King of Pentacles, which can be taken as a person or it can be taken as the maturity of learning how to administrate properly, responsibly, with fruitfulness. The overall tendency of the situation is the Four of Swords. If it were right side up to me, as it is right side up to you, it would mean it is a time of hiatus. This is not a sarcophagus. This is like the night on the vigil, the night before being knighted, when you're seeking that time out. But it is reversed to me, and that means it is a time to take action, that the retreat is over. It's time to get moving. Down here in the self image, the Ten of Wands is kind of the card of exhaustion. Look at this card. You can see that this guy has been collecting wands, collecting wands, collecting wands, and there's no way to get out of it, so he thinks. But it is, in this position, reversed, which means that the self-image in relation to this question is that it is time to let go, drop those old assumptions, stop that fighting, and move forward. I'm ready. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to make a difference. And this position is how others are seeing you in relation to this question. And this is the charge. This is the Knight of Swords, who is, with intellectual conviction and determination, ready to move forward. I think that's terrific. Hopes, fears, and expectations. We're back to that Seven of Pentacles. Like, I did all this work, and now I've got the fruits of my labor, and is this what I really want? Am I satisfied? Is it going to be good enough? Good question. And the key, the culminator, the card that is supposed to make them all make sense, is the Star. If you can see that, isn't that beautiful? The Star is the 17 in the major arcana, very close to ultimate spiritual enlightenment, and it represents the ever-flowing, ever-abundant energy of the universe, that we all have everything that we need. And to me, it says that the answer is steady, loving, persistent spirit energy acting on our question. Any questions about that? Darlene, did you follow that? Hello?
I followed it.
Okay.
So we do only have about like 10 more minutes, maybe not, 8 minutes or something. So if there's any other questions or anything else, I did put Sheila's contact information in the chat if anyone would like it, and I'll also put it on the whiteboard. If we're okay.
Go to her mailbox and we'll have what we need. You can just send it in the mail, you don't have to make a trip up here. There. We need that. And on there's
Awesome.
I can't quite hear. Is there anyone who actually had a question?
Can you hear me? This is Darlene.
Yes, I can.
The very first card with the person wrestling with the lion, I guess it was.
Uh-huh. That's strange.
To me, I can't, it's not very clear, but to me, it looks more like a physical confrontation, like on the physical push-pull, but she said it meant something else.
Well, let me, I'm going back to this basic book so that you can hear what the...
Is that Robert? Hi, James.
Yep.
Fine. I'm in the part of a 5-day conference.
Okay, Darlene. If you were looking in the basic guide,
I teach you how to use the project, which is very interesting.
Who's talking?
It's all
Okay, mute all.
metaphysics.
All right. Okay, Darlene, in this Eden Gray book, it says force of character, spiritual power overcoming material power, love triumphing over hate, the higher nature over carnal desires. You can't really see the up too well from where you are, but when you do look at the card in person, you'll see her hands are soft. There's no clenching.
If you
She's
can
looking
see
at the light of love.
card up on my screen.
So it is a lion, right? Yeah.
It is a lion.
Yeah. So normally you would think of a lion as something scary, like, but it does look like more like a house cat, with its tongue hanging out and all.
Yeah, the position it's in is more like a golden retriever puppy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't see that when it was on the table, but I see now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got as good a camera as I could afford.
No, I.
But when you get into the books, you'll see
Right.
many, many variations of how to interpret the cards. But the basics, the fundamentals are always the same. And if you go into numerology and look at the numbers that relate to the cards, both in the major arcana and the minor arcana, then they give you a clue as to the nature of the action that happens around that card. The minor cards, the different 4 suits, tell you what domain of human interest, whether it's a physical, emotional, intellectual, or material as in your security, as in the earth.
So there's also some gender differences from card to card, which must mean something pretty basic, whether it's a male or female.
Because of the historical era in which the art was done, most of the characters are male. But in the major arcana cards, male and female are about equally represented.
Right. So if a female appeared on a particular card, that gender would mean something different for that card than if it were a male in that exact same. Like if it was
No.
the hanged woman instead of the hanged man.
No, it wouldn't. No,
Oh.
because it's representing principles, not people.
Okay.
So the hanged man is an iconic figure from alchemy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know there were some female alchemists, but I think they were a minority.
Mm.
So a lot of these things have meanings that go back in history and literature.
So do these go back to the Middle Ages or even farther back, like the time of Christ, or even before?
All of the above. They first became popular in Europe, I guess around in the 1400s. But the symbology that has been used goes back to Egyptian icons and Greek and Roman and Christian, because the people who invented this particular deck and system of interpretation were part of the Order of the Golden Dawn, the occult society in England. So you're seeing some of the influences English culture, certainly European. If you got a deck of tarot cards that was designed by somebody from the Far East, from China or Japan, they would have completely different icons. But the numerical meanings would be the same. If they were using this system of numerology, there are numerology in the world. But it's
Thank you.
simplest. I just want to say it's simplest to just start doing it.
Right.
Get whatever book appeals to you and just start doing it and reading the meanings until you internalize them. And then you'll get your own meanings over the years doing readings when things turn out the way they do. I don't want to know people's questions until after the reading. And then if they want to talk about it, then they can tell me what they were looking for. And I can have an opinion. But the reading itself, the cards do what the cards do. And each of us could be an intuitive psychic, but having a tool like our dowsing pendulum or the cards or crystal or whatever system we use anchors us in this reality so we don't go insane with everything we imagine. The cards are what the cards are, right?
Right. A focus. It's a focus.
It's a
So
focus.
Sheila, it is 3:15, and
Okay.
I honestly, my screen went black. I haven't been able to see anything that's happening. And if I leave and come back, I won't be a moderator. But